in sleep. So all the principles around why it's important and why you should be really tracking it and getting in that maximum amount of sleep, and how you can be improving it as well. You need to stop snoring. So yeah, sleep for me, I think, is one of the most unlooked upon things in terms of making sure that training's going to be spot on, because that is going to be the main phase of when recovery is going to be at its best. Obviously, no systems are running at peak capacity, no muscles are under stress, so this is when you will be able to recover the best. Now, I think people just think sleep is just to give their energy, but the amount of factors that sleep will have on the body is quite influential. So I don't know if anyone has watched the Joe Rogan Matthew Walker podcast, which is quite an important one and a good one to watch. They talk about heart disease around sleep periods. So if you looked at it in terms of time changes, when you get an hour less sleep, the heart attack risk goes up by about 25%, I think. And when it goes back down, when you get an extra hour of sleep, it actually reduces by 24. So that's a major factor to understand, that if a couple of bad nights sleep can correspond to so many different factors within the body and just make things a whole lot worse. So in terms of stress, like if your body isn't getting the right amount of sleep, it's going to respond and be like, oh, I'm constantly under stress and under tension, and that's going to make your body respond with cortisol response. Oh, I've got a wanderer. But yeah, it's monitoring something that's quite important for me. I get my clients to track it, and I also get them to track caffeine to get the best amount of sleep. If you have not watched the caffeine video I posted about 2 weeks ago, I would definitely recommend watching that. It basically just discusses why sleep is an important factor to look upon. I'm trying to see if I can actually see my comments, but it is being weird. So, sleep for me is very important. In terms of how I would improve it, I have done posts on this in the past as well. So this would be caffeine intake, how much screen exposure are you getting, so blue light. So I do use blue light blockers, which are down by my bed. Are you in a good enough position to be able to sleep? Have you been moving during the day? Have you been energetic? Have you earned the right to sleep in the weirdest way possible? Are you giving yourself enough opportunity to be tired to go to bed? Which is the weirdest way of saying it. But sleep also can play a part into, are you responding well enough within your body to actually give yourself the best opportunity for, say, weight loss? So obviously weight gain is going to be a bit different, but weight loss in terms of, if you're sleeping more, you've got less opportunity to be awake and less opportunity to be eating or hungry, because you're not going to realise that you're hungry when you're asleep. So on the flip side, if you're trying to put on weight, if you are getting less sleep, you can start your meals earlier if you are in such a high surplus. So I think it's important to realise that whilst you are also in a deficit and recovery systems are potentially going to be running slow because they have less food to run from and less energy stores overall, because there's just not as many carbs, etc., to utilise and put through the cycle and actually make energy, you might be better off putting yourself in a position where you sleep more and improve recovery by physically sleeping. Now, I'm not going to talk into deep sleep, REM sleep, and light sleep today, but I think it's an important factor to realise that you should also be tracking your sleep. There is a lot better devices in terms of an Oura ring, which will give a lot more precise information, but me and my girlfriend chatted on this yesterday in terms of our sleep via Fitbit. So if you wear a Fitbit during your sleep, it'll give you a rough estimate of a sleep score. Mine last night was absolutely shocking. I think I got a 62. I was tossing and turning because of the heat. But this will give you a general indication of how much deep sleep you're getting, how much you're awake, Well, it can't fully be accurate because obviously that's going to be tracing a lot of movement as well. So I think it generally runs off your heart rate and how much you move during your sleep. Now, I can be quite a restless sleeper, so that can be not exactly accurate for me. I think I woke up like 7 times last night in my sleep, but I only physically remember 3 times. But you can get to a certain point where you are in a position where you're pretty much awake, but you aren't consciously knowing about it, which is the weirdest thing. So I think getting a tracking system for your sleep and having a cycle within your circadian rhythm is an important factor. So your circadian rhythm will be obviously your body's clock to let you know when general systems should be operating at their peak capacity and when they should be shutting down. So this is why your body will respond to certain cues such as light, and when obviously it gets dark, your body's going to know that it's getting late and it's going to start increasing the amount of melatonin it makes to hopefully help you sleep. Now, this is where blue light can come in. So if there's a reduction in natural light, so obviously in the winter that's why you get tired a lot easier and why SAD occurs, which is seasonal affective disorder. You can flip it on its head and basically say, okay, if it's dark at 5 but I am watching TV till 11, you're still exposing yourself to that light, which is not allowing your body to realise that it is shutting down for the day. So this is why blue light blockers are an important factor. Obviously you have quite strong ones and quite weak ones. I think mine are quite weak, but I can tell the difference when I do wear them and don't wear them. But it's also down to... I've got a snorer behind me. What you do before bed. Do you read a book? Like, I know I can sleep. My quality of sleep is less if I say I play Call of Duty before bed. Obviously, going through a stressful situation, heart rate increases, it's going to take time for your body to recover and get into a position where it is more relaxed. So it is really important to get yourself into that position where you are fully relaxed for bed, stress level is down, and anxiety level is down, and that's going to give you in the best position to sleep. Hopefully some questions will drop, but at the minute I have not a lot. But yeah, sleep for me, important. In terms of recovery, obviously this will be down to how much you're training and how much obviously your central nervous system is getting repeatedly damaged. Where... Stop snoring! If you are putting yourself through a stressful situation all the time, your body's not going to be able to recover, and you're going to be basically running on dampened... Oh, I'm trying to think of this in terms of analogy. Would you stop snoring, please? But yeah, in terms of that, it's like having car tyres. I'm going to go for car tyres on this one. And wearing out your tyres, and then over time, as you just progressively do not replace the tyres, the performance of the tyres is going to go down. So use them, let them recover. In terms of a heat prospect, this is the weirdest analogy I've ever said in my life, but look at where recovery is weakest, look at where it's strongest. Like, does it take you a bit longer to recover in terms of leg day or lower? Do you have quite fatiguing quads? Do you have quite fatiguing hamstrings? Can you queue up your systems and your training accordingly around your recovery and what is actually physically needed? So if I knew it'd only take me 4 working sets to go through and it cause some pretty big damage to my hamstrings, I'm not going to be like, right, I need to put 8 sets in, because it's just junk volume. So this is effectively the point where adding more volume and intensity to a session, which is not really required, and it's just going to put you into a bigger recovery debt, I'm going to say. So it's going to take you longer to recover when you could do 4 sets of hamstrings and then work back into it 2 days later or 3 days later, instead of setting you off for a week. Because the idea is not a bro split, because we want to give that frequency of training optimally, and especially if we're trying to build muscle, I'd rather chip it away every time to the amount it's required, instead of putting myself into that recovery position where it might fatigue. And if I'm doing, say, bro split time, chest day, and then 2 days later I've got shoulders, that's obviously going to affect the performance of that session, especially if I'm still fatigued from the chest session. So this is where I would then throw in like the upper session and say, okay, if I did 2 sets of chest, two sets of shoulders, which is already going to be quite warm, although I would do more warm-up work if I'm jumping through a variety of different exercises for a session, because you don't need as much time. I can go into an upper session and say, okay, I'm going to focus on compound lifts today. So if I need to focus just on that, I can just say 2 sets of bench press, 2 sets of shoulder press, and 2 sets of back work. That could be any form of back work, really. And you can just put your effort into that, finish the session, be fatigued, but then it's not going to take you 4 days to recover from that, because you're not getting absolutely screwed over. It's only taking you 2. So then in 2 days' time, you could do variations of your chest, shoulders and back and hit it again. So it can be quite varying in terms of, can you do a shoulder press one day, 2 days later can you do a lateral raise? So working in different planes of motion. Can you do chest press, and then 2 days later can you do a chest fly, lat pull down, bent over rail? It's putting yourself in a position where you're going to get the most range of the work you're doing without being absolutely fatigued all the time, which is quite an important factor. I have jabbered on for 15 minutes, so I might just set this on as a recorded video and then go from there. But if anyone does have any questions, just drop me a question in the box and I will answer it as I go. Violetta, how are we doing? How is the ankle? I hope it is well. So I think it's an important factor to look at all your recovery aspects, but not just how you recover, but are you setting yourself up into a position where you can recover and then do the same exercises again. Snoring dog. So yeah, I would always keep an eye on where you are, and then we can work into saying, okay, if you're putting yourself into such a hole, you could look into, say, a deload, and it's like, do you need a deload more often? So a deload will be, it's either a drop in intensity or a drop in just complete training. For me, it's a drop in complete training, purely for the fact that I just can't train at an intensity lower. I'd rather work through higher weights and higher loads, lower reps, than go for a high rep, low weight scheme. So I would only really have a deload on auto-regulation, so I would only do it when I feel like I need it. I'm not going to be a person that says, okay, every 6 weeks I'm going to say I need a deload, because I might just not need it, and it might affect my performance and my progression in terms of how I'm going to get weights and numbers up, and it might just drop me into a third position. Morning, Sarah. But yeah, it's understanding where you're going to be in the best position to recover, and how are you going to be achieving this long term. Because if you looked at everything short term, you're going to get bored quite quick. You're going to have to think about things a lot more often. Whereas if I said, okay, I'm going to stick with my program now for, I think I've set mine out for 12 weeks when we get back to the gym. But mine is quite simple. Mine's going to be running through about 4 or 5 exercises per session. But the intensity and the volume to those is going to be quite different. So I will look into how I can manipulate things in terms of training. Do I need more rest days? Do I need more training days? Can I implement other factors in, such as core training? For me, I don't implement that into an actual program for me. I will put it in as a warm-up for some clients, pure for the fact that that is something that we need to work on. Do we need to look into factors where it is affecting other performance levels? So, is there a weak lower back? Yeah. Is that going to affect how we perform other exercises? Yeah. Then it needs to be a considering factor. We can't just go for what we think is going to be good when there's other parts playing a role. So in terms of saying, doing a bent over row, but my grip fails. Is this going to be a factor that's going to affect performance? Yes. Then we need to work on grip strength. But if I'm working through an exercise and I've got no issue with it, I will keep progressing that. Break down an exercise, see where the issue is first, and then work on that first. If you have a squat and you have knee pain, figure out where the knee pain is coming in terms of the exercise. Is it coming from the lower part of the exercise, the higher part? I got such a snory dog. But yeah, figure out the issue first and then try and work to that. Obviously, a PT will only go so far with you, but the physios are out there as well. I know I've had a lot of help from physios. I was on one session a month. I'm going to go back into that when I get back into the gym. But that's basically just walking through how tight I was. And so that's for me. If my hamstring is tight, my range of motion and my active and passive range of motion is going to be different to someone else's. So if we looked into that, active range of motion is basically the point in which you can physically take yourself. So if I said for a hip hinge, this is the weirdest one. So if I went for a hip hinge and that was the point where I could get to without it, with where my muscles would take me, that is a stopping point. However, if I had, say, a barbell in my hands and that would take me further down because of the physical weight and gravity taking me down, that would work into my passive range of motion. So it's understanding that you need to figure out where your active is first and then load from that position. Is the active range of motion really crap? Okay, yeah, we need to work into improving that, because there's no point strengthening a muscle in a shortened position like this when we want it strong through the entire range of motion. So it's an important factor. Are you working into other factors of how your performance is going to be affected? Is your balance poor? Yes, you need to work on improving that. I'm sorry for anyone that is listening. I have a very snory dog. And that is what you can hear in the background. But, like, is your strength getting affected by another factor? Yes. Can you assess and see where that factor is? Yes. Then you need to address it first. There's no point working through an injury and getting strong with an injury, because that's going to only take you so far. So you need to look into where the issue lies and improve that factor first. I've been chatting for 20 minutes and I hope I have had a question. If not, I will end it here, but I'm going to try and do a live, especially now I can do it on my phone a lot easier. I'm going to go for 2 times a week and then hopefully get more questions, because I just babble on and on and on. But hope anyone that's watched this back has learned something at least. Peace.